All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this industry career panel for Neuromatch Academy. My name is Anne Oeray. I am a cognitive neuroscientist in the Netherlands at Leiden University, and I will be moderating this upcoming hour. I apologize for being a little bit late. We're just running a few minutes behind. So let's get started. Thanks already for the audience for kind of chiming in and telling you all where you're coming from and joining us today. And it's my great pleasure to start by welcoming our first two panelists. A few of the others might join us in a second. So I'll just ask the two of them to actually start by introducing themselves, give a brief background on their trajectory, their different education and career steps, and then we'll dive into some of the details of this journey. So Sundeep, could I ask you to start and just introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Sandeep. So I originally come from India, where I did my bachelor's in electronics and communications engineering. And then I decided to move into neuroscience. So my career in neuroscience started as a master's student at Oxford. And then I moved to London to do a PhD in cognitive neuroscience at UCL. That's, I think, where I briefly met Anne as well. So my PhD was focused on how does the brain make sense of sound, speech, music, language. And this research was based in humans. Then I went to École Normale Supérieure in Paris for a postdoc before I came back to the UK on a Wellcome Trust fellowship back at Oxford. But this time I was working in animals. So I focused on the same question, but shifted my research to doing like direct recording from the auditory cortex. So I'd spent close to 10 to 12 years in academia, I published lots of papers, etc. But then I decided to transition to industry. And my first job took me to the US, where I joined Amazon Alexa's AI org, where I worked on deep learning for speech recognition, natural language processing, language translation, and so on, primarily for the Alexa product. I was there in US for a couple of years, and then I returned to India, to Bangalore, where I currently am. Here I first joined a unicorn startup called Swiggy, which is an online food delivery platform similar to Delivery Hero in Europe, Deliveroo in the UK, and a bunch of other such similar startups, where I led the AI team. I did that for a year, and then I decided to start my own venture, worked on it for a few months. And over the last 10 to 12 months, I work independently as a consultant, where I work with a number of startups based in the US, and I also do a lot of coaching where I help candidates break into data science. So pleasure to be here on this panel and look forward to interacting with you.
All right, thanks for sharing that. So let's hear the second story. I'm not sure if I would pronounce your name correctly, but Yo Sing Chen.
Chen, yeah.
Yeah, Sing Chen, thanks for being here. And let's hear from your career journey.
Oh yeah. First of all, sorry everyone. I suddenly had a offsite meeting in the afternoon. So actually, I'm at a Starbucks at a public area. So please tolerate the surrounding noises. Yeah. So I'm Xing Chen. I'm from Singapore. So my trajectory is relatively shorter than Sandeep. So what my undergrad was is in chemistry in in the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. Then after graduation, I joined a cognitive neuroscience lab in Singapore in Duke NUS Medical School, which was our focus of research was in sleep. Yeah. And from after a few years of working as a research assistant, then I felt like it's time for me to move on. So I did another chemistry master degree in National University of Singapore. Then after that, I actually applied for PhD back in the same lab that I work. So my research is actually focusing on sleep. My PhD was on sleep in university students. And what I did was data mine like large data set of students' electronic record and propose that early morning classes are bad for attendance, grade, and sleep. Yeah. So from there, so from actually before I started my PhD, I already know that I want to join the industry. Because I've been in the academic field for many years, and I've seen how my professor work. And so it's like, I feel like that's not my calling, being a professor, doing research, writing grant, teaching students. Yeah. So from there, just before graduation, I applied for industrial job, and my journey took me to a health tech company called Bioformis. So the HQ is in Boston, and there's a data science team in Singapore. So yeah, and that's all. Yeah, relatively short. So I have been a data scientist for like almost a year. Yeah, 3 months short of a year. Yeah, in Singapore.
All right, great. Another data scientist, and we have our third panelist here with us now, Fabrizio. Thanks for joining us. I hope everything is okay on your video and audio end. For me, you're a little bit out of center of the video, but yes, thank you. Perfect. All right. So yeah, if you're ready, do you want to take it away and give us a brief introduction of yourself and your career path?
Cool. Thank you very much. Can you? I kind of hear myself double. Let me see if I can. Does it sound for you okay, guys?
Oh,
great.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I dropped for a second. Go ahead.
It's fine. It's just that I hear myself kind of double. Is that a known
For
problem?
me, it's okay.
Maybe now.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
All right. So it's just I hear the echo of myself. Let me see if. Oh, I see. It's because let me just try one quick thing, because it looks like I'm. Oh, that's the thing.
We should.
I think I have another
how many
session
scientists
open.
it takes to change a light bulb to how many
now
AI experts it takes to figure out their crowd.
I think now it's better, right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. No, it was
Perfect.
driving me crazy because I had another session open. Anyways, so sorry. Anyways, yeah, thank you very much for the invite, and yeah, I'm kind of a earlier stage career, I would say, but and my story is a little bit of a one of reinvention, in the sense that I studied biology back in Argentina quite several years ago. At that point, first off, I kind of fell in love with the field of molecular biology kind of things. I found all those experiments kind of fascinating. I ended up doing my master thesis in some wet lab in the neuroscience field already, but working on memory, extension memory, and those kinds of things. And that was tons of fun, but I found out the wet lab was really not my thing. And kind of parallel to that, I met my first scientific love, which was this whole world of self-organized criticality applied to brain dynamics and stuff like that. I took a course with Dante Chiavo back in the day, and I still can remember those days, because it was like really moving for me, intellectually speaking. And anyway, so at that point it became clear that I should learn how to program, because well, those are experiments that you cannot really do, trying to analyze dynamics and simulate how things change. So I became aware then that I should learn to program. And that basically, so that was the first kind of reinvention that turned into this from more classic biology into computational kind of things. So I ended up doing a PhD in Hamburg at laboratory, working with more doing sort of theoretical work, trying to understand how structural brain networks, how connect. So if you look at the brain as a network kind of thing, this network has some properties, and the idea is trying to understand how those properties emerge. So yeah, my PhD was about that, trying to with modeling work, try to understand how that can happen, that some of these properties kind of emerge. Yeah, and that opened basically the door to this world of Python and open source software and machine learning and data. So that that's kind of the second sort of reinvention where I kind of push myself into this path of trying to let's put it this way, dive into data-driven approaches to different problems, and eventually by the end of my PhD, I decided I want to give it a shot in industry, and I'm working now as a data scientist, where maybe we can talk later about that a bit more. But yeah, basically I now work at a e-commerce company. We're doing some sort of real-time fraud detection with neural networks and stuff like that. So amassing large amounts of data and yeah, learning a ton about how to put something on its feed that actually works and that doesn't break when people interact with it. So that's kind of my story.
Great. Yes, it's really nice. We have a nice mix of people that kind of made the move towards industry at different stages in their career. So I think that's something, an audience question that already came up and that I think many people will resonate with is if each of you, and perhaps especially Sundeep, there was a question already from the audience that you were on the academic track for quite some time. What shaped this choice of eventually making this this step towards industry, and also for the others, like what were your considerations, and perhaps what were the decisive factors that made you go towards the industry track. So let's start with Sundeep.
Sure. Yeah, this is a question that I've discussed a lot with my friends from academia. So yes, so I, when I left academia, I was in Oxford, I had my own Wellcome Trust fellowship, and things were going fine. But I kind of had a sense that, when I looked at how my seniors, that is, professors, spend the time, there's a lot of aspects of being a full-time academic that, including admin work, teaching, etc., that I felt like would take time away from research. And it was around 2017 when I was contemplating, when I was still a postdoc and contemplating moving to industry. And one of the things that was happening at that time was the rise of deep learning. Right? So it was still early days. I mean, we've seen a lot over the last 5 to 6 years. And DeepMind came out of the same UCL department where I did my PhD. So I was actively following that field. I was very excited by what was happening. And I felt that this was a chance for me to actually leverage my neuroscience skills and apply them to industry. Right. So I think prior to me, like the generation of scientists before me, the only opportunity for them to move into industry was more along, let's say if you go into management consulting or pharma or, scientific communication, etc. I think AI, deep learning, data science have really opened up the field for a lot of folks. And I felt at that point that, I can take a risk, let me spend 2 years in the industry, see what I like. And if I don't like, I still have a strong enough record to come back to academia, right? As someone with a more diverse set of experience and bringing some best practices from the industry as well. So that was the thought process that I had around that time. And after spending, now close to 4 years outside academia in the field of AI, I'm sort of committed to this field. I do still publish, papers now in the field of AI, NLP, speech, etc., which are, and the research is done very differently from how you do cognitive neuroscience or computational neuroscience research. But overall, if I look back, I think these last 4 years in industry have really shaped me and helped me become a more efficient, like a better problem solver. I have understood context about different kinds of problems in different kinds of industries, and also understand how things have to work in industry. Right? You have to build a product or something that works for the end customer or enterprise. And a lot of the way things that how you do that kind of research is different from how we do basic fundamental research in the lab. So yeah, so that was my thought process and my journey. And if you ask me what I want to do next, I still don't know. So I'm always open to change and new ideas. And yeah, and that's how I'm here where I am today.
Yeah, thank you. I really like this this idea that you said I'll just try it for a few years. I can always come back, kind of testing the waters. I think many people might recognize, this kind of urge to just see how things
Yeah.
are and how different this environment is. So I'm also curious, from Sing Chen, could you also share a bit, like, were you considering the academic track, or like, what were your considerations at that time when you made that step?
Okay, for me, it's quite straightforward. I always tell this story when in the first week of the class, the professor asks like everyone, why do you do PhD? So of course, mine is a medical school. So most people like join the cancer research, and what they say is like for saving humankind along that road. And I'm the only one in class that say that because I want a better promotion and earn more money. Yeah, I'm the more practical kind. So like people always say there's a better way to earn money. You don't need a PhD. But for me, it's like if I can get my interest, which is like research and money at one go, I think PhD is the way to go. But of course, I agree with them that if you just want to earn money, don't do a PhD. PhD should be your passion to learn more. So for me, it's like one stop for two things. My interest in doing more research in cognitive neuroscience plus a way to go for more money. But of course, staying in academic has its own risk. So from, like I said, I've observed my professor for years. So actually from my understanding, professor is more like entrepreneurship. You need to get your own funding. You need to hire your own people. You need to even make budgets for your own research. So it's like entrepreneurship. Then for me, I know for my character, I prefer to focus on like a task or something. So maybe that is not my calling. Yeah, so that's actually like before I do my PhD, I already made out my mind that after PhD, I'm going to industry, go out and see how people work together in a big organization. So that's also the kind of thing that intrigues me. Yeah, compared to a small lab. So yeah, that's how I made my decision. Very straightforward.
Yeah, thank you. So there are also a lot of other questions which are kind of geared more towards the practical considerations of making this transition. So there's actually a few questions that come to this topic, and maybe Fabrizio, maybe you can speak to this. So one is if you could talk a bit more about kind of entry-level jobs in industry on the data science side, especially if you come with research experience from this particular case, cognitive neuroscience or other neuroscience. Like, could you talk a little bit about how was your day-to-day transition, and what were some of the challenges in that transition?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a bit of a different world, of course. For example, the first thing that I had to kind of that I kind of ran into a wall and had to quickly adapt was a bit of a mindset thing, in which so during the, I mean, in academia or when you do experiments, even theoretical ones, kind of simulations and stuff like that, you really want to think through things, like put everything on paper kind of thing, and we want to waste your time doing some experiment and finding out afterwards that the design was so bad that it's not going to work, that you're not going to be able to draw conclusions. So you think first a lot, really, really hard, and then you do stuff, kind of thing. That's the mindset in academia, or my experience at least. While in industry, especially when you have things in production, the idea is like you want to really do first something and put it to work and let this feedback, this iteration, be as fast as possible. So you want to really put a minimal kind of proof of concept in place and let reality kind of feed back onto you and work from there. Not so. Don't think about every aspect first and then do, but think about some of the aspects and start doing. So and build a system around fast iteration. So that's a bit of the different kind of art. So in science, it's a bit of the art of really coming up with good ideas and designs and stuff. And here's more, build a system that allows you to discard ideas quickly and or pursue paths quickly that might lead to something. So that's the first kind of more impressive mindset change or kind of wall that I had to overcome. So that's one idea. The other idea is, of course, you have to deal with many more people. Like communication becomes a fundamental aspect in your daily life. I spent, again, doing some theoretical work, kind of 5 years of my life. So most of the days I would speak with very few people, and that has some consequences in how you then interact, how you deal with some situations. For example, you come into a structure that's way larger than you. When you're doing PhD, it's like you are the PhD kind of thing. There's not much more beyond you. In this case, it's the other way around. Like when you come into industry, like into a company, you're a little piece, and there's it's a ship already sailing, and you have to kind of learn how things work there. Test the waters, how power is distributed in this organization, in this group, what kind of group dynamics happen there. So I think that's also another thing to kind of learn, and it's like you will take advantage if you quickly identify the power structure of the group, the group dynamics of the team you're working on. That's another kind of more meta thing, but it's a bit also a different. One aspect that you have to consider, and also one other thing is that probably also was a bit hard at the beginning for me is you come into a place and you expect things to be well structured kind of thing. So things are working, but they're not necessarily completely or well structured or organized. And so one idea there would be to not try to control this whole dynamics at once, but kind of try to, by delivering things and by doing things, kind of position yourself in a place that you can actually kind of drive a little bit this boat in the direction you want to. So those are kind of a bit meta things, but I think these are kind of the first thoughts that come to mind when I'm thinking about jumping into a job. Probably it's not exactly the link to the tutorial that some people might be expected to get from this question, but we can talk about that if you want later.
Yeah, thank you. I think you already gave a lot of kind of concrete ideas of like how people should think about this transition. And one of the things I would also ask each of you, and perhaps you can just summarize a few of the resources and the ways you set about like practically making this transition happen. So one of the questions from Alex is if you could suggest some websites, to look for job positions. But I think more broadly, what are kind of practical steps that you took and how did you reach out to people in this process? So maybe you can just kind of briefly give a few examples. Maybe we could start with Sing-Chen.
Yeah, actually, I've been like trying to comment on questions, but actually, when I look at this question, the first thing came across my mind is like, where are these 22 people from? Like, which country are you from? Because research job position related to neuroscience, yeah, depends on which country you are from. There's work permit issue. There's like which lab you are joining. So that's why none of us can give you like a clear direction on like which website. Yeah, so maybe if you guys can give some background on you, then maybe we can give a better idea. So one website is, of course, my alma mater, UNUS Medical School. If you don't mind coming to Singapore to work, there's always like we have a neuroscience program. So we are always looking for researcher. Yeah, so that's one path to go.
Yes, Sundeep, do you want to give a few of your kind of strategies practically for looking into industry jobs?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the most challenging things is to be sure of the decision before you actually decide what you want to do. Like it took me some time to realize that I actually wanted to do this, right? And I think during that sort of evaluation or exploratory phase, you should talk to as many people as you can. So I was lucky in the sense that I was based in London, where there was already a lot of industry, startups, etc., tech, etc., right? And I could see what was happening out there, although things are a bit behind the curve compared to the US with respect to tech. But I was able to learn a lot from people in my, let's say, folks who I knew from UCL or I lived in good enough college. I know a lot of other folks doing different things, right? So that is the first thing. Like, be sure that you actually want to transition from academia. And why? Right? Don't just follow what everyone else is doing, because I've seen sometimes that doesn't go well if you just follow the herd, right? Secondly, be sure of what skills you have that are in demand in industry, right? So a lot of times as scientists, we tend to, undermine our skills. But, things like speaking, writing, communication are very, very important skills, which not a lot of folks in industry are very good at, right? So you write papers, you talk about it, right? And you think about data and problems from a hypothesis-driven manner, first principles thinking, right? All these skills are very, very important in industry as well. So yeah, just keep an open mind. Although I think right now, like data science is an easy or a clear choice for a lot of people, especially if your current research involves working with data of any type. But within data science, you have to know which domain that you're interested in. So for instance, Fabrizio is working in e-commerce, but there's finance, healthcare, education, etc. And depending on the domain, the kind of data and the kind of problems that you would like to tackle will be different. So talk to as many people as you can. There are lots of resources on the website, websites like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, so you can see reviews of companies, what kind of questions are asked in interviews, what are the different kind of job descriptions and skills and responsibilities. And on LinkedIn, feel free to cold email, cold contact folks who are actually doing what you want to do, right? So see who are your role models, either from your alumni network, etc., and actually reach out. And most folks are happy to help out and share their advice, like all of us today.
Right. Should I jump in? Alrighty. Yeah, I think two things. First, to what Sandeep just said. The first one is like, is you have to have some degree of kind of security of what you want to do. Now, so you have to have some sort of conviction, but allow yourself also to kind of try out, to say, okay, I'm not making this decision like for the rest of my life, but it's like I want to try out 1 year, and that will make things easier. That's the first thing. The second thing is like also be aware that science, for some reason that probably we don't have time to discuss here, but it's a machine that feeds imposter syndrome like extremely efficiently. So scientists are very good at like basically not trusting, not believing that they're able to do things. So be aware of that and try to act against that. But going back to the kind of practical advice kind of thing. So one thing that I would do is try to center or think about some technologies that will allow you to solve problems. So for example, pick one language that you really like or that you think might be cool, whatever, say Python, R, Julia, you name it, and learn it very well, because that would allow you to kind of bootstrap yourself in new situations. So you at least have this tool that it's also very general. You can learn, I mean, in a programming language will allow you to again bootstrap yourself in many different scenarios. So that's the first thing. And in my experience, it worked well with Python, but again, it's your choice. That's the first thing. Other thing is like learn some technologies that are very general and that everybody needs. For example, learn Git and how to interact with some hub, like say GitHub or any of those. That's also always a good idea. No matter where, you're gonna need it. If you have time, go a bit beyond and try to familiarize with, say, technologies like Docker or in general concepts like containers and stuff like that. So things that are all across the board in industry, all the people are using that. That's also another cool piece of technology that you can also start small and learn. If you have the chance, start interacting in some way with cloud systems. Pick a platform, whatever it is, AWS, Google Cloud, whatever platform, it's cheaper for you. And just put a container, just put a bucket there, just interact with data there, use one API to interact with the data there, pull things, push things there, interact with cloud systems, kind of get a bit of a feeling of what it looks like, what it feels like, what kind of problems you face. Because again, every company that does something with some data today, it's kind of either using it for serving or for storing or for moving around or for processing. You will have to interact with cloud systems. So that will be another piece of technology that you can learn. Just put a cloud function and like pick some example and do something with some cloud platform. Yeah, and the other one is of course practice as much as you can. You can use platforms like Kaggle or problems that you might like. If you think of a problem, you say, okay, I might need this information that comes from websites. Okay, just try to write a little program that scrapes the websites and pull the information for yourself. Kind of start small, but do practical things.
Yeah, I think that's all really great advice. Thanks. I want to just mention to the audience, there's a couple of polls that you can click on and answer. That way we can get a bit of a better sense of who are in the audience with us. So don't forget to answer those. And one question that came up, because this panel is combined between the deep learning and the computational neuroscience tracks of NMA. And some questions came up specifically more on the deep learning side, specifically also to Sundeep, as you made this transition from the more neuroscience side to specifically, diving into deep learning. Could you talk a little bit more about the deep learning side of things?
Right. So I think I did invest a lot of time and effort into learning about deep learning, right? So as neuroscientists, most of us know about neurons or networks of neurons and lots of other things. But you have to think, put that slightly aside and think from a systems perspective. Right? You're building a piece of software and a product which is written based on code, data, and models, and how do all these three different things come together to generate predictions based on the kind of input data you're feeding, right? So it could be unstructured data like text, images, audio, video, or a lot of structured data, which is the typical business data, right? So my journey into deep learning involved a lot of learning. I started doing a lot of early courses. There weren't that many 5-6 years ago, but there was the deep learning textbook by Ian Goodfellow, which is still pretty good. Nowadays, you will also see a lot of online courses. So if you go to Stanford, computer science, Oxford, UCL, CMU, lots of universities put up the courses online on YouTube. And I think at that time, there's also Andrew Ng's courses on Coursera, which was a very good introduction, right? So you can invest a lot of time learning the theoretical bits and then start practicing and implementing some of these neural networks on toy data sets that you can find on Kaggle, on Google datasets, and other places, right? So that gave me an intuition about how deep learning is different, how to train neural networks. And my sort of positioning when I was reaching out to companies was that I'm a neuroscientist who understands how the brain works, somewhat. They don't know that how much we know or don't know. But I can apply all that neuroscience to come up with new algorithms or innovative methods for your particular product. So we see nowadays a lot of overlap between neuroscience and deep learning in the industry. Let's say whether we talk about language translation, speech recognition, image recognition, etc. Right. So I think after learning, practicing, the final thing that you have to do is to market yourself as a candidate who has a diverse set of skills and who can bring new ideas to the table, right? So I think, so that's one. The other thing to mention briefly is that in industry and AI, there are different kinds of roles. So you have your research scientist roles who still do research, write papers, build models. Then you have your applied scientist, data scientist roles who are more business facing. So they work closer to the business problems. And then you also have your engineers, data engineers or ML engineers who are actually building the infrastructure for the entire sort of machine learning pipeline, right? So there are different roles which might suit you, which might interest you depending on your interests, your background, etc. And all of these profiles are required to build a successful AI product, right? So think about where your skills are strongest and how you can align your skills and market yourself as a candidate for one of these profiles in the deep learning industry.
Thank you. So another question that I had prepared, but actually is also very highly voted, is maybe for each of you, if you could highlight the best and the worst aspects of each, of industry and academia. So perhaps you could each, talk about your industry, your academic time, and give kind of the highs and the lows, and also your industry time. I know that answering this in the ask question box, or also to the panelists, you can also type along and answer, but also just I would like to hear from you. So maybe we can start with Fabrizio on this one.
Right. It's a tough one because it's like saying, okay, tell me what's your favorite band. But anyways, so it started with science. So the best is of course that you hopefully get the chance to explore many things you don't know anything about, and so you learn how to kind of dive into a field and to basically learn stuff. And depending, I'm trying to be as general as possible, but then depending on what you're working on, it's like again, you get to try to play with many different things, and it's a very stimulating intellectual exercise. Probably the bad thing is that in terms of how the world works, is that I mean, if you look at science from the perspective of an investor, it's like what are the things that you want, or the first, kind of the main thing you want to do if you invest is you want to be diverse. You want to diversify your investment, and science is a bit of the contrary to that. It's like you put a lot into one basket. So that's something you have to learn to deal with, and might shape your career, your life a lot. So I would say that's kind of, for me, the in the big picture, the thing that is the worst from science. And apart from the fact that it's a probably individuals, not necessarily, but as a whole, it's a pretty conservative and slow moving kind of entity. So yes, that's something also you have to deal with. And so power structures there all over the place that you might have to deal with. So changing to industry, in my short experience, I would say the best thing is you get to build something that really works, that interacts with the real world. You make an impact that has very fast feedback on you. It's like I mean, of course, it depends, but in general terms, you build something that that does something, or hopefully contributes in some positive way to the world, or to the company, or whatever. And that's kind of a nice thing. So you get rewards in a shorter term than in academia, where you might work for years running an experiment to find out if at all something worked. And it's then not clear why necessarily you want to do that. And so that's the one aspect I would highlight. And the worst, it's difficult to decide, but probably, of course, one thing is that, again, you're part of something much bigger, and there you also lose sort of freedom. Be that the time you have to spend in meetings that you don't want to be attending, or eventually also working on stuff, building stuff that you don't really want to build. That's also kind of a trade-off. And yes, that's kind of the two things that I would highlight.
Yeah. So I know, I think, Jen, that you've already been answering, but perhaps you could briefly add extra pros and cons for industry and academia to the ones that Mauricio has already brought up.
Yeah, so industry, definitely the number one thing is money. Money is much higher in industry and academy. So if that is what you sought for, industry is definitely where you should go. For academia, well, you only start when you become a professor, to be honest. Even postdoc is just still training to be professor. So your career will only start when you really become professor. So that is a tough road. And from my understanding, out of like 10 people, maybe one will get assistant professorship. And out of 10, maybe one will finally get their associate professor and their tenure. Yeah, so it's a very tough road. So if you really want to chase down this route, you need to look left and look right. There's so many labs to your left and so many labs to your right. Why the university wants to open a similar lab that you're going to set it up? So yeah, the competition is definitely there. So yeah, that is one thing to think about when you decide to go onto this route. As for industry, well, that's like for me, data scientist, I can go and work at everywhere that needs a data scientist. So the choices is definitely higher. Then for other thing, best thing, well, for academy, you are always meet with like brilliant mind. So people are there to pursue science, pursue research, pursue the truth. And it's always good to have this kind of conversation if that is what you like. And for industry, we are there to like complete a project or like to serve a customer. So sometimes it's just a thing that you need to complete. So not necessarily something you like or dislike. It's just a thing you need to complete. So that is also the cons, I would say. Yeah, and like I said in the answer, the yearly conference is definitely a highlight for academic life. And as for industry, depends on where you work. Some company actually don't really sponsor such thing, so you are losing out. Yep. So I think it depends on your character and mindset, like whether you just prefer to do a research, want to pursue like science, want to like discuss about like brilliant and smart stuff every day as the thing that interests you and what gets you out of your bed, then academia is definitely your cup of tea. But just bear in mind that professorship is not that easy to get. If you think what you saw is like money and or like working in big organizations to see how like these things like move the world, then industry is definitely the way to go.
All right, thank you. I just see we're joined also by Jane Wong on the panel. Hi, thanks for joining us. I hope you can hear me. So since we're already a little bit in, maybe I will just jump straight. Maybe you can just say in one sentence or so where you're working now. And we were on the question of what you consider the biggest highs and lows in both industry and academia. So maybe I'll hand it over to you, Jane, if you're interested in jumping straight to that question.
Yeah, so yeah, sorry, I'm joining late. I think I got the time difference a little screwed up, so sorry about
okay.
that. Yeah, so the question is the highs and lows of academia and industry?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Well, I mean, I guess the reason that I I chose to go into industry is because I really enjoy the collaborative nature of it. At least at the company that I'm at, DeepMind, we're able to really have a lot of freedom in who we are able to collaborate with, freedom of movement, of being able to switch research topics if we want, which is not really the kind of freedom you get in academia because there's a lot of, like grants that you have to write. You're sort of contained within a lab or within a particular field or what you have funding for. So it just gives you a lot of freedom in that respect. That said, I mean, I guess the downsides of industry might be that you are, part of a larger whole. You're not so much just your own lab and able to, thus like direct everything that happens in your lab. You kind of are existing within a wider ecosystem of the company. and you're dealing with company culture and and the other people that work there very closely. So.
Thank you. So Cindy, do you have any other highs and lows for you that didn't yet come up? Having tasted from both sides.
Yeah, I would just reiterate that I think one of the most compelling factors about academia is to have that intellectual freedom to do your own research. Of course, it becomes harder and harder as you need to get grants. But I was fortunate to have that kind of a stint in academia. One of the sort of slight cons of academia, and I see a lot of current students as well, is the lack of sort of mentoring and guidance and flexibility about their career options and what to do next. Right? Typically, most professors assume that you will continue in academia, and it's not seen well if you move on. But thankfully, things are changing. Industry, similar to what Jane said, you do get the opportunity to work on sort of cutting edge products or models or algorithms, and you can have a huge impact through that kind of work. And one of the cons of industry is, of course, dealing with people, right? It's both good and bad, but I've seen the worst side of humanity in industry compared to academia. But that is something that everyone has to learn to deal with anyways, right? So it's an important skill. How do you manage your managers, your stakeholders, etc.? Yeah, and that's what I would say.
All right, thank you. So there's still a ton more questions that I'm afraid we won't all be able to answer. But so thanks for also keeping up the chat. And, there were already a lot of LinkedIn profiles shared. So, hopefully this can also be an opportunity for all of you to connect with one another on these topics. So since we have 7 minutes left, unfortunately, the time is flying. I'd like to ask each panelist to think of one thing that they wished they had known, in coming to industry and in this transition. So what is something that you might wish to tell your past younger self, or that you could tell the audience members now in this transition to industry? I'm not sure if someone wants to just take the floor and go first, or if you need a little time to think about it. I hope I'm not catching you too much by surprise. Fabrizio, do you happen to already have some advice that you want to kick us off with?
I have one idea. So my thing from outside that people, let's say when you join a company, they know really well what they're doing, that they know their stuff, they're experts, and probably that it's something you have to take with more. To take more carefully and kind of think of, okay, that's why they hire you. They hire you because they don't know how to do it. So, in a way, kind of thing, or let's put it the other way around. We are all trying to learn how to do this thing. So go with that flow and don't expect people to know everything there. Just be aware that they are also learning as well. That you have to kind of collaborate to learn all together, and that nobody really knows where this thing is going. You all together trying to sail the boat somewhere. So try to go with the flow and don't assume they know everything. Kind of think yourself as part of a structure that's learning itself how to manage.
Thank you. Jane, do you maybe have a piece of advice that you would give our audience members or your younger self on this industry transition?
I think that the biggest thing that allowed me to get to my current position is just making connections, like being open to connections. So the way that I actually heard about DeepMind was through somebody I met at a neuroscience summer school, and it was just a random connection that I made at a conference, and we became friends. And years later, she told me about this position, and that was how I found out about the company. So I think that, yeah, going to conferences, really seeking out those who are doing work that you're really interested in, and, you know, just seeing how you can get closer to that space is really was really pivotal for me. And then deciding early on that I sort of like that this was my interest, was in AI. And being in neuroscience at the time, I had to do a little bit of search to see how I can actually get to the place that I wanted to be. And so that, you know, that's why I'm at DeepMind, because I think it's a pretty singular place for somebody who, you know, I had a pretty traditional, like, computational neuroscience background. And so it, yeah, DeepMind was a pretty good fit. And it's just about, yeah, like getting the lay of the land. And I think that's another part having these connections, is that you can really get a sense for what else is out there and not just academia.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think this panel is already a great kind of way for people to hear a bit about you know, that sense of industry. So yeah, Sundeep and Xingchen, do you have any kind of thoughts on closing and leaving the audience?
Sure. I would say like it's important for you to know your talent and know your worth, and ask for it, because industry is not going to give you make it easy for you, right? You have to negotiate and ask for what you deserve. That's something that I've learned the hard way during that transition. It's important to not fall prey to the imposter syndrome, thinking that I'm joining a new domain, new industry. I don't know how to do all these things. But back yourself, have that sense of confidence. And it's also important, I feel, similar to how Jane mentioned about networking. I think if you also build a strong online profile, be it your LinkedIn or website, etc., a lot of opportunities will also come to you. In fact, that's how I got the opportunity for Amazon. Right, the recruiter just reached out, and I considered and went through with it. Right, so sometimes you might not know what exactly you would want to do, but if you have a strong profile, you keep networking, you're aware of what are the latest trends. The universe will make sure that you find the right gig for you.
Thank you. Yeah, Xingchen, do you want to leave us with any closing moments? We're just a couple of minutes to go, so unfortunately, we have only an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the most junior here among the panelists. So it's funny for me to close this. But for me, my thought is if there's one thing I've told myself earlier before I transit into industry, might be to actually understand what's the trend in the industry now. What I mean is because in school, normally what they teach you is the curriculum that they keep passing down from generation to generation before. University, the thing is they seldom change their curriculum at all to fit what is currently in the field. So now we are at Industry 4.0, that's what everyone is talking about. And for me, when I interview interns and students, then I ask them have you ever heard of Transformer? Then I need to highlight it's not the one in the movie, it's the other one. Yeah, so no one has ever heard about it, and it's 5 years since the thing has been there already. So for me, what I would have hoped that I could tell myself is to read more and to understand more what is the most up to current trend, not just in the textbook, not just in the research, not just in your field, but in generally, what is the thing that transition, what is the next wild thing that comes out, then you should know. Yeah, so that's the thing.
All right, thank you. So it's 12:30 for me. Perhaps for you it's a different time, but unfortunately we've reached our 1 hour of this panel discussion. So let me just wrap this up by thanking all the speakers. It's been really helpful. There were a ton of questions. Also, thanks to everyone in the audience for engaging. And you can look back at the chat and connect with each other. I would also invite you to the Discord server for NMA. Also, our panelists, might kind of chime in there and share more of their journey. You should be able to watch back this recording if you haven't been able to catch all of it. And for those who answered in the poll that they're still undecided about academia versus industry, we also have a academia-focused career panel later this NMA. So check that out as well. So thank you, everyone. It was really great to hear all your stories, and I think it was really helpful for the NMA audience. So have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, and see you for the next NMA session. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.